The air inside the great crimson hall felt heavy, almost alive. It was filled with the quiet rustle of alien robes and the low, curious murmurs of the Drakthari nobles. The walls rose high and curved inward, lined with black banners stitched. In gold thread, each marked with the sigil of the Drakthari Empire. A coiled serpent wrapped around a star. Tall crystal pillars glowed faintly red, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Two guards dragged Commander Elias Vance forward. His boots scraped against the stone tiles, leaving a faint trail of dust and blood behind him. His hands were bound in thick magnetic cuffs, the kind that could lock around a prisoner's wrists with a charge strong enough to shatter bone if they struggled too much. His uniform was torn and stained with dirt from the prison cells. Elias kept his head up. His eyes scanned the hall, memorizing details. He counted guards. He noted where the exits were. Even now, surrounded by enemies, his mind was working like a soldier's. At the far end of the hall, upon a throne of black stone inlaid with gold, sat the queen of the Drakthari Empire, Shara Vale, daughter of the first conqueror, ruler of 900 star systems. She was taller than a human woman, her posture elegant but with a dangerous stillness. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, scaled in shades of pale gold. Her eyes were like molten amber, sharp and unblinking. When Elias was shoved forward into the open space before the throne, the murmurs grew louder. "A human," someone whispered. "That's impossible," another voice replied. The queen lifted one clawed hand, and the room fell silent. Her gaze moved slowly from Elias's boots up to his face. She tilted her head, studying him like a rare specimen. "Unbind him," she ordered. The guards hesitated. "Your Majesty," I said, "unbind him." Her voice was calm, but there was a weight to it that made even the most hardened warrior obey. The cuffs clicked open and fell to the floor. Elias rubbed his wrists, but his eyes never left hers. "You stand before me without fear," the queen said, her voice carrying across the hall. "Do you understand where you are, human?" "I understand perfectly," Elias replied. His voice was steady, each word sharp. "I'm in the throne room of the enemy." A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. No prisoner spoke to the Yi queen like that. Shiara's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "Enemy? Yes, but not just any enemy." She rose from her throne and stepped forward. The long train of her robe whispered across the stone floor. When she stopped, before him the room seemed to shrink. She looked into his eyes for a long moment, searching for something. Then she drew in a slow breath, and her expression changed. Surprise, almost disbelief. "It's true, then," she said softly, though her voice still carried to every ear in the hall. "You really are the human of legend." Elias didn't move. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," she replied, circling him slowly. "My people have a story, passed down for centuries, a prophecy. It speaks of a human who would one day stand in this very hall, a human who would not kneel, even in the face of death." She stopped behind him. "A human who would decide the fate of the Drakthari Empire." The words stirred something in the crowd, unease, curiosity, maybe even fear. Elias let out a short breath, almost a laugh. "Sounds like a good story, but I'm just a soldier." The queen's eyes narrowed. "You survived the attack on Arcturus Station. You escaped the destruction of the frigate Vanguard, and you were found deep in Drakthari space, carrying nothing but a broken communicator and a combat knife. Do not insult me by pretending you are ordinary." He met her gaze. "I didn't come here to play the role in some alien fairy tale." A faint hiss of warning came from one of the guards, but the queen raised her hand again, silencing him. She seemed almost amused now. "Tell me, Commander Elias Vance," she said, pronouncing his name with perfect precision. "Why did you come to my world?" Elias glanced around at the silent court, at the strange faces watching him, at the guards, gripping their spears a little tighter. He could feel their suspicion, their hunger for blood. But he didn't lower his voice. "Because your people took something that belongs to mine." Her eyes flickered with interest. "And what is that?" He smiled faintly but didn't answer. The queen stepped closer until she was only a breath away. "You will tell me," she said, her tone low but unshakable, "whether you choose to do it willingly, or after I have taken apart every lie you think will protect you." Before Elias could answer, the great doors at the end of the hall opened again and another figure entered, a Drakthari noble in flowing robes of deep blue. He carried a scroll in his hands and bowed to the queen. "Majesty," the noble said, his voice trembling slightly, "the High Council demands the execution of the human immediately. They say his presence here is a threat to the stability of the empire." The queen did not look at him. Her gaze stayed locked on Elias. "Tell the High Council," she said, "that the human lives for now." The noble's eyes widened, but he bowed and backed away. Shiara turned and walked back to her throne. "Take him to the private chamber," she ordered. "No one is to speak to him but me." 2 guards moved forward, but this time they didn't chain his hands. They only gestured for him to follow. Elias glanced once more at the queen. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Part curiosity, part calculation. As the guards led him through the side door and down a long, dim corridor, he let his expression remain cold and unreadable. Inside, though, his mind was racing. He didn't know what the so-called legend meant, but one thing was clear. The queen thought he was important. And that meant he might still have a chance. Far behind him, in the echoing silence of the throne room, Queen Shiara Vale sat deep in thought. The human's defiance had stirred something she had not felt in years, a strange, dangerous hope. The guards led Elias down a narrow corridor that curved deep into the palace. The air was cooler here, scented faintly with some kind of metallic incense. The walls were smooth black stone, inlaid with thin veins of gold that shimmered faintly, under the light of hovering crystal lamps. The guards stayed silent as they walked. Their armor clinked softly, the sound echoing off the walls. Elias kept his head up, his eyes moving constantly, noting every corner, every camera, every possible way out. At the end of the hall stood a tall door made of dark metal. Strange markings ran across its surface, symbols Elias couldn't read. One guard pressed his clawed hand against a glowing panel, and the door slid open with a low hiss. They pushed Elias inside. The chamber beyond was smaller than he expected, but no less impressive. The ceiling was high and domed, painted with a vast star map that glowed faintly in the dim light. The walls were lined with shelves filled with crystal containers and rolls of thin metallic parchment. A long table stood in the center, its surface covered with old artifacts, some human, some alien, and some unrecognizable. At the far end of the room stood Queen Shiara. She had removed the heavy robe she wore in the throne room, replacing it with a lighter garment of silver and black. It flowed around her like liquid shadow as she turned to face him. The guards stepped back into the hallway, and the door slid shut, sealing them inside. For a moment, neither spoke. The queen studied him as though she could read every thought in his head. Elias stood still, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing him uneasy. Finally, she broke the silence. "Do you know why you are still alive, Commander?" He shrugged slightly. "Because you like the sound of my voice?" A faint smile touched her lips. "Because you are not just a man. You are a piece of history, a living proof that the prophecy is real." She walked slowly toward him, her bare feet silent against the polished floor. Many cycles ago, before my grandmother's reign, a vision came to the seers of the Drakthari. They spoke of a human, a warrior, who would cross the darkness of space and stand before the throne. A human who could not be broken by fear or pain. And that human, they said, would decide the fate of our kind. Elias frowned. Sounds dramatic, but humans aren't exactly common anymore. No, she said quietly. They are not. We saw to that. Her words were blunt, but there was no cruelty in her tone. Just fact. Your homeworld was burned, your fleet scattered, your colonies taken, most of your people gone. We believed you were extinct. She stepped closer. Until now. Elias held her gaze. There are still survivors. More than you think. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as though weighing the truth in his voice. Then she turned and walked to a tall shelf. From it, she took a thin crystal tablet and set it on. The table between them. The tablet came alive with light, projecting an image into the air, a swirling galaxy with one small star highlighted in red. This, she said, was your home. Earth. Elias said nothing, but his jaw tightened. The image shifted, showing fleets of alien warships descending on blue oceans and green continents. Explosions lit the skies. Then the image zoomed in to show cities burning, the ground shattering under bombardment. Elias forced himself to watch, but inside, every image was like a blade. The war was long, Shiara continued. Your people fought harder than any enemy we had faced before, stronger, smarter. But you were too few, and we were too many. She looked at him. Do you know what the legend says will happen when the human of prophecy appears? Enlighten me, he said flatly. It says that the human will bring either salvation or ruin, that the Drakthari Empire will rise higher than ever before, or fall into dust. Elias almost laughed, but it came out more like a breath through clenched teeth. You're saying I get to choose? That sounds like a lot of responsibility for one man. She didn't smile. It is not a choice you can refuse. Because whether you mean to or not, your actions will tip the balance. He stepped toward her, closing some of the distance. Let me guess, you think you can control me, shape me into something that helps your empire. I think, she said, meeting his eyes without flinching, that you have come here for a reason, and I want to know what it is. Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked slowly around the table, letting his eyes pass over the strange artifacts. He spotted something familiar. An old human dog tag, the kind worn by soldiers decades ago. He reached out and touched it, feeling the cold metal under his fingers. That, Shiara said, was taken from the body of a man who fought at the Battle of Eos Gate. He was the last human we saw. Until you. Elias let go of the tag and looked at her. Your people stole something from us, something that belongs to humanity. I'm here to take it back. Her head tilted slightly. And what would that be? He said nothing. The queen studied him for a moment longer, then stepped, closer again. Her voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. You believe I will not find the answer, but I will. And when I do, I will decide if you live or die. Elias smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. You can try. A faint spark of something. Amusement, maybe even respect. Lit her eyes for just a second before it was gone. She turned away, walking back to the table, and began scrolling through the galaxy map on the crystal tablet. I will keep you here for now, she said. You will have food, water, and a place to rest. But do not mistake this for freedom. You are still my prisoner. Elias stepped back toward the door, but it did not open. And if I try to leave? You will not succeed, she said simply. And if you do, I will find you. The door finally slid open. 2 guards entered. their weapons at the ready. "Take him to the guest quarters," Shiara ordered. "No chains, but he does not leave the palace." The guards nodded and gestured for Elias to follow. As they led him out, Elias cast one last look over his shoulder. The queen was still standing at the table, her head bent over the star map, as if searching for something hidden among the stars. In that moment, he knew two things. She would not stop trying to learn his true mission. And she was far more dangerous than any Drakthari soldier he had faced. But he also knew something she didn't. He wasn't alone on this world. Somewhere in the shadows beyond the palace walls, his crew was waiting for his signal, and when the time came, they would strike. The guest quarters were far better than the prison cell Elias had expected. The room was large, with a wide bed, soft sheets, and a view of the city through a tall, arched window. Beyond the glass, the capital of the Drakthari Empire stretched, out in layers of silver towers, hovering platforms, and wide avenues lined with glowing trees. Ships moved in the sky like silent birds of metal. Two guards stood at the door, their eyes fixed on him. They wore no helmets, their reptilian features, sharp and watchful. Elias walked slowly to the window, hands clasped loosely behind his back. To any observer, he might have looked calm, maybe even impressed by the alien city. But his mind was racing. He counted the patrol ships, noted the pattern of traffic in the sky, and looked for blind spots in the streets below. Every detail was another piece of the puzzle. Somewhere out there, hidden among the city's millions, his crew was waiting. He thought of them now. Captain Lyra Kane, his second-in-command. Jax, their pilot and engineer. And Mira, the best infiltration specialist he had ever met. They had all risked everything to follow him this deep into Drakthari territory. Their mission was dangerous enough when it was just about stealing back the AI core. Now, with the Queen keeping him under her watch, it had become even more complicated. That night, when the city's lights dimmed and the alien moons rose above the horizon, Elias began his quiet work. He asked for a writing slate, a common enough request for a prisoner under soft confinement. The guards brought one without question. He spent the next hour pretending to write notes about his experience in the palace. But he wasn't writing notes. The slate's stylus had a tiny microchip hidden inside its grip, a trick Mira had prepared in case they were captured. Elias used it to send a burst transmission, so small and encrypted that the palace sensors wouldn't notice. The message was short, in position. Wait for signal. He knew the crew would get it, and he knew they would be ready. The next day, the Queen summoned him again, not to the throne room, but to a private balcony garden that overlooked the city. The air there was warm and scented with alien flowers that glowed faintly blue in the sunlight. Shiara stood by the railing, her robe fluttering in the wind. She didn't turn when he approached. "You see my city, human?" she said. "It is the heart of the empire. If it falls, so does everything my people have built for centuries." Elias joined her at the railing. "Impressive view," he said. "But I've seen cities fall before." She glanced at him. "That is why you are dangerous. You do not fear loss, because you have already lost everything." He didn't answer. The Queen turned fully toward him now. "I have been thinking about your mission. Whatever you are here for, it must be valuable. Perhaps valuable enough to risk death for. Tell me, Elias Vance, is it worth dying for?" "Everything worth doing is worth dying for," he said. For a moment, her amber eyes studied him in silence. Then she gave a small nod, almost as if she respected the answer. But Elias noticed something else in her expression. She was curious, yes, but also watchful. She knew he was hiding something, and she was waiting for him to slip. He had no intention of doing that. Over the next few days, Elias kept his routine simple. He ate the food brought to him, walked the length of his quarters, and spoke only when spoken to. To the guards, he seemed like a prisoner settling into his confinement, but he was listening, every word the guards exchanged outside his door, every step of their patrols, every shift change. He memorized it all, and at night, when the palace was quiet, he sent short bursts of coded messages from the writing slate. Mira reported that they had located the palace's underground vault, the place where the AI core was being kept. It was guarded by layers of security, energy shields, biometric locks, and patrol drones. No one got in without the Queen's personal clearance. The crew's plan was simple in theory, but dangerous in execution. Create a distraction big enough to pull guards away from the vault, then infiltrate and grab the AI core before anyone realized it was gone. Elias's job was to get the Queen away from the vault and keep her busy. The opportunity came sooner than he expected. One evening, a disturbance rippled through the palace. A Drekthari envoy from a nearby system had been attacked on their way to the capital. The attackers had vanished into the city before they could be captured. The Queen was furious. "Find them!" she ordered her guards. "I want them alive!" As the palace scrambled to respond, Elias sent a single-burst message to his crew. Go. While the Queen directed her generals, Elias stayed close. He asked questions, offered insights from his experience in human warfare, and kept her engaged in long tactical discussions. She seemed almost intrigued by his ideas, enough to keep him by her side for hours. Meanwhile, deep in the palace's lower levels, Mira and Jax moved like shadows through the maintenance tunnels. They had timed everything perfectly. Most of the guards were busy searching for the attackers in the city, and the palace's internal patrols were stretched thin. Using stolen clearance codes and a few improvised tools, they reached the outer, security layer of the vault. The AI core was inside, a sleek black sphere no larger than a human head, its surface covered in faint glowing lines. It was the last functioning AI from Earth's defense grid, capable of controlling an entire fleet of automated warships. Jack started bypassing the energy shield while Mira kept watch. Back in the upper halls, Elias knew something was wrong. Queen's gaze shifted briefly, as if she had sensed an unseen disturbance. "You seem distracted," he said casually. Her eyes narrowed. "Do you know why I keep you alive, human?" "Because I'm interesting," he said. "No," she replied. "Because I want to see if you are as dangerous as the prophecy says." "But danger has a cost," she signaled to one of her aides. "Check the vault." Elias felt a cold weight settle in his chest. If her guards reached the vault before the crew was done, it would all be over. He needed to act fast. He stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Shayara, if you check that vault, you'll never hear the truth about why I'm here." That caught her attention. "Then tell me now." "I will," he said. "But not here. This is something only you should hear." Her amber eyes searched his face for a long moment. Then she gestured for her guards to stand down. "Follow me." Elias led her away from the throne room, down a quieter hall, buying his crew precious minutes. In the vault chamber, Jax finally brought down the shield. Mira slipped inside, grabbed the AI core, and secured it in a shock-proof pack. They retraced their path through the tunnels, avoiding the few patrols still inside the palace. When they reached their hidden exit point, Mira sent a single coded pulse to Elias. Package secured. On the balcony overlooking the city, Elias finally stopped. "Now tell me," the Queen said, "what did we take from you?" He met her gaze. Hope. For the first time, her expression faltered, just slightly. And in that moment, he knew his crew was gone, slipping into the city with the AI core. The silent revolt had begun. The quiet hum of the palace corridors was suddenly pierced by the sharp alarm. Red lights flooded the walls and ceiling, casting an eerie glow on the smooth stone surfaces. Guards rushed past Elias's quarters, their heavy boots pounding the floors with urgency. Somewhere deep within the heart of the Drakthari palace, the peace was shattered. Elias stood by the window, his eyes sharp as he watched the chaos begin to unfold outside. The city's silver towers twinkled under the twin moons, but now their shining facades were marred by flashes of movement, security teams deploying across the streets, drones scanning every alleyway. The AI core was in play. His own heart beat faster, not with fear, but with hope. The door to his quarters slid open, and two guards entered swiftly. They spoke no words but gestured for him to follow. Elias didn't resist. He knew this was the moment the queen would decide his fate. Queen Shiara waited in the council chamber, the vast room filled with glowing star maps and war plans etched in light. Her golden scales gleamed under the soft illumination, but her face was unreadable, calm and cold like the surface of a distant planet. When Elias was brought before her, she stood from her seat and fixed him with a steady gaze. "You have caused chaos in my palace," she said, voice low and steady. "Your crew has stolen what we have guarded for centuries, the AI core of your lost world." Elias met her gaze without flinching. "It belongs to humanity. You stole it. It's time we take it back." Shara folded her arms, weighing him carefully. "Do you understand what you have done? This is not just a simple theft. The core controls fleets, weapons that could destroy planets. Giving it back to your people would shift the balance of power in the galaxy." Elias's voice was firm. "It's time that balance changed. Your empire has ruled through fear for too long." The queen's eyes narrowed. "And yet, you came here alone. You risked everything for this one prize. Why?" "Because hope is worth more than fear," Elias replied. "Because humans don't give up, no matter how dark the night." The council chamber grew silent for a moment. Then the queen's advisors began to speak, voices sharp and full of anger. "This human is dangerous," one said. "He must be executed immediately." "That would be wise," another added. "His rebellion could ignite a war we cannot control." Shiara raised a hand, silencing the voices. "I will make the choice." She turned back to Elias. "You say hope is worth everything? Then I offer you a choice." Elias's eyes sharpened. "What choice? Leave now with your crew, take the AI core, and never return to our worlds. Walk away." "And I will allow it." He frowned. "And if I refuse?" The queen's gaze darkened. "If you refuse, I will hunt you across the stars. Your people will face the full fury of the Drakthari Empire." Elias considered her words carefully. The offer was tempting: freedom, safety, a chance to rebuild without more bloodshed. But something inside him rejected it. "No," he said firmly. "I won't back down." Shiara's expression softened for a moment. "You remind me of the stories, of the human who would not bend." The queen motioned to her aides, and the chamber doors opened wide. Outside, the sounds of battle echoed. Shouts, blaster fire, the clash of metal. "We must prepare," she said. "Your choice will change everything, human." Elias nodded. "I'm ready." In the war room, Queen Shiara stood before the glowing star maps, watching the movements of her forces as they responded to the revolt ignited by Elias's crew. Her mind was a storm of thoughts. Could she trust this human? Was he truly the one, spoken of in the prophecy? And what would the future hold if she let him go free? Her fingers brushed the control panel, sending orders to her fleet. "Prepare for battle. The human of legend has awakened." Meanwhile, Elias and his team raced. Through the streets of the city, the AI core safely secured. They moved quickly, slipping past patrols and dodging drone scans. Captain Lyra Kane kept the pilot's seat steady, eyes fixed on the flight paths. "We're almost there," she said through the comms. "Just a little farther." Jax and Mira covered their backs, weapons ready. As the shuttle rose into the dark sky, the city below exploded into chaos. Blaster fire lit the streets like fireworks, and ships scrambled to intercept. Elias looked back once, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. Back on the palace balcony, Queen Shiara watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the human was free again, a spark of hope in the dark. Her voice was a whisper in the wind. May the prophecy be true. The stars stretched endlessly above the black sky, cold and distant. The small shuttle cut through the silence of space, slipping away from the glowing cities of the Drakthari capital. Inside, Elias sat quietly, the AI core secured tightly in, a reinforced case beside him. His crew was tense but focused. The weight of what they had done pressed on every one of them. Captain Lyra Kane was at the controls, steady and calm, her eyes fixed on the navigation console. "We've broken through their perimeter," she said. "No sign of pursuit yet." Jax adjusted the engine power. "The core's systems are stable. Looks like we can make it to the rendezvous point without issue." Mira scanned the ship's sensors. "I'm still watching for patrols, but it's clear so far. We've got a small window." Elias nodded but didn't speak. His mind raced, thinking about what came next. They had stolen back a symbol of hope, the last link to humanity's lost power, but the road ahead was uncertain. The Drakthari Empire would not let this go easily. Back on the Drakthari throne world, Queen Shiara stood on her balcony, watching the distant stars where the shuttle had disappeared. The battle below had quieted for now, but the tension in the air was thick as smoke. Her advisors gathered around, their faces grim. "The humans will regroup," one warned. "This theft will be seen as an act of war," Shiara nodded slowly. "Then we prepare. We do not underestimate the humans again." She turned her gaze toward the sky. "This human of legend is no ordinary warrior. He carries the fate of his people and ours." Meanwhile, Elias gathered his crew in the shuttle's small briefing room. The AI core hummed softly, its faint glow pulsing like a heartbeat. "We're not safe yet," Elias said. "The Queen's warning means war is coming, but this core gives us a chance to fight back, to rebuild what was lost." Lyra nodded. "We'll need allies, other human survivors out there." Jax frowned. "And we'll need to be smarter. The Drakthari won't stop hunting us." Mira's voice was steady. "Then we make sure they never catch us again." The shuttle traveled deeper into uncharted space. Elias stared out the viewport, thinking about the countless worlds waiting for their message. The spark of a human return. His thoughts turned to Earth, now just a memory. But this AI core, this symbol of hope, could bring back the strength to fight, to survive, and to rise again. He whispered, "Let them remember why they feared us." In the months that followed, news of the human rebellion spread across the galaxy. Small pockets of survivors rallied to Elias's cause. Together, they began rebuilding a fleet, not just of ships, but of hope, courage, and determination. Queen Shiara watched these developments with a mix of respect and wariness. She prepared her empire for the coming storm, knowing that the fate of both species hung in the balance. The legend of the human of prophecy was no longer just a story, it was real, and the galaxy would never be the same.